and welcome to another Harbour Family Law podcast. This afternoon, I'm joined... No, you can tell me who I'm joined by. Who am I joined by? Who are you?
You are joined by Katy Zikking, Director at Harbour Family Law, Specialist Solicitor.
And who are you? Why are you here?
And Emma Gordon, Senior Associate at Harbour Family Law.
Ah, great to be joined by you ladies.
Thank you, Fiona.
What are we talking about today?
We are talking about a very hot topic, Narcissistic Personality Disorder, and how that can impact financial proceedings, Children Act proceedings, and the overall process of separation and divorce. Narcissistic personality disorder is quite a well-known phrase now. People are very, very educated about issues like NPD, like mental health, like depression, and clients are wanting reassurance, really, that their legal advisors are also aware of this.
Yes, I would say people on the phone now are asking, do you understand narcissism? Because everybody who's getting divorced is divorcing a narcissist, right, at the moment. I mean, it's not a phrase that we came across, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. It wasn't, was it? Whereas now it is a big buzzword.
And, it is a common trait, I'm afraid, in people who are separating sometimes. But we have to remember that it is another personality trait. It is another personality trait, such as a depressive personality or an obsessive personality. A narcissistic trait is another.
Well, it's a range and spectrum as well, isn't it? I mean, aren't we all potentially or got a little bit of narcissism in us?
Absolutely. I think we all have narcissistic traits, don't we? And it depends how...
Whether they're being triggered.
Yeah, how triggered they are, or how strong they are, or how numerous they are with the person. So we thought it would just be helpful to have a chat about our experience of that in the divorce process, and trying to give some perspective to our clients and prospective clients about how NPD might be viewed by the court if you're going through Children Act proceedings or if you're going through financial remedy proceedings. How much the court will take account of that or will look into it. So firstly, I was going to say, as a family lawyer, I've got a massive, I'm going to make a noise there with my book. I've got a huge tome here. This is by Karen Walker, who herself is a family solicitor, and Dr. McKenna, who have written a practitioner's guide to narcissism and family law.
I would say it's very good, isn't it?
It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good.
It really does give you a very thorough insight into narcissistic traits and how to deal with them in this process. So that's a really good read. Obviously, that's for practitioners, but also Mark Varmeyer is a psychotherapist, and listeners might want to look him up to find out more about narcissism in the way that he describes it. He's a very, very experienced psychotherapist, and he knows a lot about narcissistic traits.
Yeah.
It's important for us to say, I think, we are not experts. We are family lawyers, but this impacts our work to a certain degree. And because of the amount that it comes up and the amount that clients ask about it, I think it's just helpful for us to give our perspective on it.
Yes.
I think that's right. And I think having a resource like that for clients to go to get some advice on how to deal with it is a useful thing potentially, because more often than not, if you have a client come to you who says that they have now realised that this is what they've been dealing with, they didn't realise it at the time, or they haven't realised it for a long time, that they then don't know how to navigate around that personality when they're trying to exit from that dynamic. And so having resources like that can be helpful for them in terms of now navigating this transition.
Yeah, well, I listened to the podcast from Mark. Yeah, and I thought it was really, really very, very good. His son, NPD, and just very calm approach to it. Often when people are dealing with narcissism, they're a bit like, panic, what do I deal with? I've got to fight fire with fire. And he was very calm in that podcast and really enlightening and, explaining that often you don't know for a while when you're meeting with someone whether or not they're narcissistic. The tendencies can be very muted, can't they, often? And so some of the traits which often people do identify with narcissism are just bad behaviour sometimes. It is a complex condition that shows up in very different ways. And, you know, I think as family lawyers, obviously you're dealing with people in a moment of high stress and, you know, terrible low times within life, and you know, sometimes it can just be bad behavior, can't it? And obviously you get very well versed at dealing with people in times of stress and who are not being their best selves, versions of their best selves, and how you deal with it. What would your advice to be with anyone dealing with this, you know, difficult personalities? There are some sort of strategies, aren't there, that we can deploy?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking we'd talk about Children Act proceedings and financial remedy proceedings separately, and just sort of drill down to the detail of that and think about how the courts look at NPD. You know, I think I've said on a previous podcast, 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100 even, I will recommend counselling to a client. So the first thing to say is, if somebody is coming to me and saying they believe their partner is a narcissist and they're describing behaviour which is abusive, then, you know, the first stop is counselling. That is essential support for clients, because, like Emma was just saying, they need to learn how to navigate themselves out of this.
There's a lot to come to terms with, isn't there? When you sort of, you know, some clients will feel a lot of guilt about the fact that they've been in this situation and, you know, potentially what that might have exposed the children to. And there's a lot for them to work through in navigating through that. So, I'm with you on that. I definitely would hope most clients
a support network
package.
Yeah. Because not one person can be everything, can they, to somebody who needs the support around them. So having a counsellor is one element of a support network. Yeah,
absolutely. I didn't know, Emma, if you wanted to say something about the Children Act process and what you're seeing with NPD in the Children Act process.
Yeah, so, well, you mentioned earlier about there being an increased awareness about narcissistic personality and also traits and behaviours. I think there are pros and cons, aren't there? The plus of that is that there isn't such an uphill battle to persuade people that this is real, that this is happening to them and this is what they've experienced. The downside of that is that it's pleaded a lot in a lot of cases. And therefore, whether it's a case where it's going to have evidential difference in a case is quite a factor. But in children cases in particular, what the court's concerned with is how or if does this affect the children? Does this affect the parenting of these children? Does this behaviour have to affect the future, or will it affect the future? And then step back from that, is this something that the court needs to assess? So where sometimes there are cases where perhaps there are conflicting allegations between the parties, the court is often faced with one person alleging a behaviour which is perhaps then turned back on them. That can be very difficult to navigate, but I've seen it in several cases, twice this year, in fact, where an independent social worker has looked at a case, spoken to the child, spoken to the parties, and they've been able to determine that one party was a victim and one party was a perpetrator, and provide that advice and that assessment back to the court. So it's the experts can do the work that needs to be done in those very difficult kind of entrenched positions where you feel like everything you say is thrown back at you. And those clients do get there. They do feel vindicated, and they do get that support, but it's a process, unfortunately.
You've got to hold your nerve some of the time.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
And by contrast, the financial remedy side of things, what you're really saying in a financial remedy process is the other side's conduct is so bad that it ought to be taken into account when we decide how to divide the assets. Now, that's a conduct argument, and the bar for conduct, as we all know, is really high, really high, super, super high. ridiculously high, in my opinion.
Almost unattainable high.
It's almost unattainable, isn't it? It's it's called gross and obvious conduct. But, just remembering the case where a husband had gambled, hundreds of thousands of pounds away, spent money on prostitutes, cocaine. That wasn't high enough.
That wasn't enough.
That wasn't enough for there to be a division in the wife's favour because he had wasted family funds. Now, if that isn't high enough, I'm not quite sure what's going to be. The sorts of cases that we are told will be taken into account are where, people have tried to murder the other party. I mean, it really is ridiculously high. So the idea of putting NPD as a reason into conduct in a financial remedy case is, unfortunately, and probably very unfairly, not going to gather much steam in the court process.
Yeah, so if you say, I want more money because my husband's a narcissist and I've put up with his narcissistic ways for the last 5 years, it's not going to work.
It won't work.
No.
I can say that with some confidence.
Aside from the legal point, I think the courts are wary of being told everyone's a narcissist, aren't they? I feel like potentially it's a bit of an overused phrase.
Yeah. There is that. And, we have to be careful, don't we, as practitioners, when we're being told by a client that somebody is a narcissist. We have to tread carefully about what we are actually alleging and where that evidentially has come from. But certainly the idea of being raised in a financial case is, I'm afraid, very, very unlikely to gain any traction, which can be incredibly, incredibly unfair on people. But of course, it's not just narcissism that may be discounted. It's all sorts of different behaviour types.
Bad behaviour.
Bad behaviour
generally.
of all descriptions.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not just focused on NPD. So it really is a case of trying to maintain some perspective, I guess, for our clients, acting in their best interest. Really try to maintain some perspective about how NPD is going to affect their case legally, but also more personally, what are they doing about it in terms of their own emotional support network, and how are they going to deal with that moving forward, especially if they have children, especially, once the divorce is done and they're living separately, they still have to co-parent with a narcissist, potentially. And that is something that, of course, there's more help available nowadays than there has been, but, it's something that clients need to be made aware of and signposted to, because that's really the challenge, that they have to co-parent with somebody for a very long time.
Yeah, and they need strategies for dealing with that. And I think those do start within the process of divorce, don't they? Those strategies of, communication skills with a narcissist, and how is it the grey rock theory, where you just stop that feeding the narcissist and sort of just, really don't keep playing into the constant repetitive sort of bad behaviour. And it can be quite a new skill, can't it? If you've had a way of dealing with someone and a way of interacting with someone for a very long time, to actually totally change the way you are and how you deal with someone can be really, really challenging.
And the classic narcissistic trait is, they demand a reaction, don't they? They carry out behaviour which demands reaction all the time, and to step out of that and to stop reacting is it's hard, but it's a very good way of minimising the impact that person can have on you.
Yes.
I think that's one of the useful filters we can provide, isn't it? When we receive something which is perhaps almost designed to generate a reaction, that's our sort of place to say, look, this is what's happened. We're not going to react to it. This is how we're going to deal with it. These are the options, next steps, bosh, bosh, bosh. And to try and give that clarity of strategy where the instant response would be emotional, understandably, completely understandably, but actually to lift away from that emotion and just say, no, we're not dealing with it that way. We're dealing with it this way, and just stay true to our path. Our strategy is one of not kicking off.
Yes, and not reacting is a strength, not a weakness. Yeah. And that can be quite difficult, can't it, sometimes?
Yeah, and it's just trying to navigate that perspective all the time, and trying to rein yourself or your client in from reacting, which is a real benefit for the whole process. But the reality is, if you have a narcissist in a separating couple, your case is likely to be more expensive, full of more dispute, more litigious, likely to last longer, likely to be more stressful. The impact is real. It will have an impact on the overall situation. And if you're thinking about, who ends up in a final hearing in a financial remedy case, there's probably a reasonable proportion of those cases where it is driven from a narcissistic personality standpoint, because they are unwilling to
negotiate.
They're unwilling to negotiate, compromise. They will, take things forward in a litigious way. So, yeah, it's all about trying to hold that all, I guess, for the client, isn't it, through the course of the case, and say, yeah, this is happening and we've seen it before and this is how it will unfold, and trying to give some reassurance to the client that you understand the impact that that's having on them, and offer them some signposting in terms of help as well.
Strategies for dealing with that, yes. And those might be unexpected, mightn't they, by the client? They might think, well, of course we've got to reply, of course we've got to do this, and actually sometimes the strategies will be quite unexpected.
Do nothing.
It's do nothing. Stay quiet, and that can be difficult when you feel so wronged. But it's having that faith in just adjusting your usual pattern of behaviour to something different. Your usual responses need to go in the bin, and some new ones need to be learnt. And
principles are very expensive, as I am prone to say. If you are going to take umbrage at every single thing that a narcissist does or doesn't do to you, it will become a protracted and prolonged case, even more so. So it is a case of trying to step back from that and take a realistic viewpoint on what can be achieved realistically. Let me just give you the name again, Mark Varmeyer. So we'll put his name at the bottom of our podcast so clients can look up him as well, and we'll also give some links to counselling and psychotherapy on that issue. Is there anything else you either of you would like to say about narcissism as it affects a family lawyer? I mean, I was just thinking, if you said to any family lawyer who's done this job for a reasonable amount of time, are you an expert in narcissistic personality disorder? I expect the answer from the majority of them would be yes. Because you do deal with it day in, day out. It is part of our job. But don't forget, it's also part of our job to deal with lots of other personality types. So, it's all part of the fabric of what we're doing, which is dealing with people.
And I guess I would see my role within that as identifying strategies to help that person through their experience as quickly as possible. I'm certainly not an expert in helping that narcissist or helping them understand what's happened to them in the past. A solicitor is part of a bigger support network, and it is just a question of having some strategies to make sure that you're through your divorce journey as painlessly, as quickly, as inexpensively as possible. And sometimes that advice may surprise people. You might be suggesting some strategies that they don't think they weren't expecting would be the advice, but it is about recognising those personality traits, isn't it? And getting some strategies in place. And I would think that we're all very well qualified to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, agreed entirely. I think we do deal with it all the time. I think they are inherently the more litigious cases, and they're the ones probably that need a bit more potentially navigating around. You're not going to persuade someone with narcissistic personality that actually they're wrong and that their case is flawed, but to move around that and suggest agreeing to disagree on different points, or moving on from points where you're not going to find consensus, just trying to cut through, get to the end in whatever way you can get there, it is going to be more beneficial than getting in the weeds of the argument.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you both very much for talking about NPD today. Our details, Fiona's, Emma's, mine, Kate's, are on the website. So, if you have a question about NPD in relation to your separation or divorce or your children, any issue regarding that, do please get in touch and we will be very happy to discuss things with you.
Yeah, definitely.